Is it okay if I use this one? Obviously, yes. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Randy Partain. My pronouns are they, them, and I am delighted to wish you a happy Easter today, whether you are with us in person or joining us online. We acknowledge that the lands on which we gather are the original lands of the Erie and of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg peoples, also known as the Three Fires Council. We recognize the need to learn more about these complex and sometimes painful histories, to care for the land we inhabit, and to honor the diverse peoples and cultures who preceded us, as well as those living alongside us now. Unitarian Universalism in general, and this congregation specifically, strive to be welcoming and inclusive. We represent many different identities, many different ways of naming and experiencing the divine, and we are united in this faith tradition by a common set of values, and sometimes aspirationally by the practice of covenant, mutual promises that connect us to one another and define the kind of people we hope to be and the kind of community that we hope to create together. If you are experiencing Unitarian Universalism for the first time or just relatively new to our congregation, I knew I forgot something. There's a little card in the pew racks. Look at that. Carol's got one over there. There's a card in the pew rack that you can fill out, and when the offering plate comes around later today, you can place that card in the offering plate, and we can get back to you and answer any questions that you might have. If you're participating online, you can do the same thing, basically. You can visit our website, uucleveland.org, and send us some information there, or just send us an email, and we'd be happy to get back to you. We co-create sacred space with one another by our intentional presence here, and in that spirit, I invite you to silence any electronic devices that might distract from the sacredness of our time together. And since everyone seems to have done that, I will invite Laurie Holmes to light our chalice today. And in your pew rack, there's a yellow card that says Our Covenant, which we'll read together as the chalice is lit. Laurie is a part of our Helping Hands group, our Urban Hope Ministry. She's on the lay pastoral care team and the Committee on Shared Ministry, and she's going to be sharing a little bit about her love for this congregation in just a few moments. So I invite you to read together our covenant. We cultivate trust with one another by celebrating differences, honoring boundaries, and offering compassion and care. We listen to each other deeply with curiosity and wonder. We speak for ourselves without need to defend ourselves or persuade each other. We create safe and brave space for healthy conflict, creativity, and fun. We reconcile through forgiving and making amends when we hurt one another. As we are called to worship today, I invite you to hear these words from Pesha Gertler. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life. All the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin, my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again, where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one close to my heart and say, holy, holy. May we bring all of who we are into this space together as we join in worship today. Before we greet one another, though, I want to reintroduce Laurie Holmes to share a little bit as a stewardship testimonial.
Hello, my name is Laurie Holmes. When asked to do a testimonial, my first reaction was, oh no. Then I thought about my recent experiences with members of this congregation, and I thought I needed to share this. At the auction this year, I signed up for 4 events hosted in people's homes. Although we have been coming to this church for almost 44 years, I felt shy about interacting with folks I didn't know very well. Surprise, we had fun, getting to know others, and even my somewhat reclusive husband enjoyed himself. These are safe people who are accepting and friendly. My own passion in social justice and interpersonal relations, I have found that working side by side, preparing or serving food at Urban Hope, serving others in our congregation with helping hands, providing rides or delivering cookies at the holidays, and reaching out to others by way of lay pastoral care has not only aided others, but has widened my circle of folks here that I now know and care for. I can't end without saying that after raising our own sons in this congregation, I am thrilled that our grandchildren, Harrison and Nina, have this same village, helping them to become inquisitive, loving human beings. Thank you for helping them feel safe here. This is why I pledge to UUCC, and I hope that you will too.
Thank you, Laurie. We are going to sing together hymn number 1000. It is the very first hymn in the teal hymnal, Morning Has Come. Before we do that, though, I invite you to take a moment to welcome those around you. If you see a face you don't recognize, please make a special effort to let that person know that they are welcome this morning. If you're a choir member, I hope you were listening to Recruit a little bit, because there was some good stuff coming from a lot of folks. Each Sunday, we take a moment to share our joys and concerns with one another. And if you're joining us online, I invite you to put any joys or concerns that you want to share with the congregation in the comments down below. If you're here in person, then we have a book where you can write down anything that you want shared with the congregation. We have one that is a little bit in advance because it says April 1st, but I think that it really means today because Lisa Hathaway has a birthday coming up this week, and so we wish Lisa Hathaway a happy birthday and celebrate with her. Almost. Also, a stone of grief this week. Sarah Nash died unexpectedly earlier this week, and so we grieve the loss of Sarah and send our love and care to her family and loved ones. And it's likely that we bring a lot of other joys and concerns into this space today, so I invite you to come forward and place a stone in the water to acknowledge any joys or concerns you carry with you. And if you're not coming forward to put a stone in the water, this is a time when you can use that for personal reflection, but also you can send love and care to those who are coming forward today. we place a stone for those joys or concerns shared online today. And we acknowledge that each of these stones represents a need, a celebration, a burden, something filled with gratitude. These stones are abundant with meaning, and they are ours now in this community. So we hope that we have an opportunity to share them with one another, what these stones might represent, and that through sharing our burdens, they may be lessened, and by sharing our joys, may they be magnified. Amen.
Well, good morning and happy Easter. I brought some treats, some Easter treats in a special Easter basket, but I didn't know there'd be so many of you, so I am woefully underprepared, but I'd like to share them with some of us at least. So I have some treats here. We're going to see you in the front. I'm going to give you a treat if that is okay. What I have for you today is a gross celery stalk and core. Happy Easter. No, none for you? Okay. This is carrot trimmings. Some carrot trimmings for you. Happy Easter. Can anyone guess what the last one is? I have cucumber peels just for you. Happy Easter. These are terrific treats, aren't they? They would be terrific if we were sheep. These would be amazing sheep treats. This is actually a remarkable thing about ruminant creatures. Do we know about ruminant creatures? Ruminants are all of those herding animals like sheep. They're actually linchpins of ecosystems. They are the crucial part that is there to process and kind of manicure the landscape and sort of make sense of things. And because of that, sheep have to be extremely open-minded and willing to try new things. And as a result of that biology, all these treats that I gave, all of these sort of like well past their prime kind of, like not quite rotten, but like one notch back. Those are really good things for sheep. Things that are too gross to eat for us. Things that are not good treats are really great treats for sheep. And I think that's really interesting because for such an adorable creature, sheep get kind of a bad rap. Sheep is not a good metaphor, right, in our language. Like if you're being sheepish, well, that's not a good, we wouldn't call someone for being sheepish in a good way. Even if someone had a good reason to be sheepish, that's not a good trait to have. And then, of course, the worst thing at all that we can imagine, I would say especially in a UU community, the worst thing to be is a sheeple, right? A follower, a kind of easily led astray, kind of group thinking kind of a creature. I'm thinking about sheep because we're going to have a reading a little bit later that's going to talk about the feeding of sheep. And we're going to have a very, well, let's just say rotten food I don't think is going to come up in the conversation. But it made me reconsider what it might mean in that story to think about what it means to feed sheep or to be the sheep who are being fed. Because if we take sheep in this greater sense of their wisdom as these open-minded, willing creatures, what we find is that there's a great deal of wisdom there. These are animals that are not afraid to try new things. They're not afraid, especially, to be nourished by many different kinds of things. And most of all, and perhaps most challenging of all, they're not afraid to chew on something for a while before it feels safe to swallow. Maybe we could imagine ourselves in both of those roles. Maybe sometimes we are the feeders, and sometimes we are being fed. And maybe that kind of universal willingness to find sustenance in all of the things that we are and all of the things that we bring is something that can make us a little bit more comfortable being sheeple in our own ways. So, as we are thinking about this season, this time of the year when so much is growing and budding around us, it might be important for us to remember that there are so many out there who need being fed. And there's so much out there that can help feed us. So maybe a sheep is not a terrible thing to be.
Each week we share our offering with an organization in the community that is living out our values. And I do want to share with you the gratitude that we receive in letters is right outside the fellowship hall. And one of those letters is from the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, thanking us for our contribution of $731 that you provided earlier this month. Today's recipient is the Migration and Refugee Services of Catholic Charities, and I just wanted to share with you briefly the story of one of their clients, Maria. Maria is a 24-year-old native of Tomorazon, a small farming town in the north of Colombia, and Maria says she inherited from her father a love of education, a sense of character, a gift of leadership, and a desire to serve others. At 15, she went into university to study law at Riojaca. She traveled home on the weekends and other breaks, and together with local friends, she began organizing the community to take responsibility for its own well-being. And they organized activities from cleaning brigades to dance groups. When she turned 18, she became involved with strengthening the social rule of law and peaceful coexistence for vulnerable populations, especially refugees and the displaced where she was living. She provided free legal help and also began to make appeals to the youth of her town to make independent decisions, especially to vote. They won 2 seats in elections for community action boards. At 21, Maria graduated as an attorney and intensified her community organizing efforts, and all of this created enemies. She began receiving calls on her home phone, calling her obscene names, issuing death threats, often 6 or more calls a day. Local police offered no assistance, and their superiors in the capital city only gave vague promises of help. So the day before a scheduled meeting of citizens, she heard shots ring out, and she and her parents found 4 bullet holes in their front door and a pamphlet from a local guerrilla group. She and her family again went to the police station, where they suggested that perhaps she should just leave town. Before she had a chance to do so, Maria was physically attacked and her family was threatened. Maria's family was able to get her a flight to Mexico, and she requested U.S. asylum on November 9th, 2022. She fears returning home would mean a death sentence, as it has for others who have engaged in this kind of civic empowerment work. Catholic Charities Migration and Relief Services is helping close to 200 refugees in situations like Maria's resettle in a safe place to call home, where they can receive the care that they need, experience a sense of genuine belonging, and meaningfully contribute to the world around them. So I hope that you will give generously and within your means today. You can place money in the plate as it comes around, or if you would like, you can use Cash App. Our handle is $UUCC 44122. Thank you. I don't know. Whoa. That's all right. Here we are again. Are you awake? The choir music wasn't too soothing for you? I don't know what it is about this particular Easter, but we've got special animals that people have placed in our care. This one is a little sturdier. This isn't a real kitty cat up here. But it was mysteriously on my chair this morning, and then I had this lamb because somebody thought we were talking about feeding sheep, and then I abruptly caught it on something and snagged it, so it's a little bit wounded. So I think it can be stitched up and repaired, but we'll see what we can do. But I wanted to share with you a story today. It comes from the end of the Gospel of John. It's after all of the typical Easter stuff that you might know about from the Gospel stories. This would be after Jesus has been doing ministry for 3 years, going around gathering a group of disciples who believe in what he's doing, making people angry with the things that he's preaching. He's had a final meal with them where he has said, I am going someplace you can't follow me, and you're going to be left to carry this ministry. So after that meal, you probably know about Judas. Went and told the authorities where they could find Jesus. They came and got him. They arrested Jesus. They tortured him and led him through town the next day and they crucified him outside of town with a few common thieves. Not the revolution that the disciples had been expecting, some of them. And then the following Sunday, after the Friday when Jesus was killed, executed, the disciples went to the tomb where he had been buried, and they found that it was empty. And some of them ran away scared. That's where the Gospel of Mark actually ends. The disciples find the tomb empty, and they run away scared. And that's the original ending of the Gospel of Mark. Not particularly inspiring. But the other Gospels, Matthew and Luke and John, all have something that happens after the resurrection. Jesus interacts with his disciples, with other people. There's more to the story. And so in the Gospel of John, there are 3 different times when Jesus appears to his disciples, and this is the final one, this chapter 21 of the Gospel of John. And it starts, there was one other time when Jesus appeared to the disciples, this time by the Sea of Tiberias, and this is how it happened. Simon Peter, Thomas the twin, Nathanael the Galilean from Cana, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. Simon Peter said, I'm going fishing. And the other disciple said, then we'll come with you. After Jesus' death, the disciples really didn't know what to do with themselves. They didn't have a lot of purpose. They didn't have a lot of direction. The person that they were following was gone, wasn't really around anymore to lead them and to provide an example. And so they went back to doing the things that they had done before, their old livelihood of going fishing. This band of fishermen just fell back on their old habits of being. And so they went out into the boat, and they caught nothing through the night. As day was breaking, Jesus was standing on the beach. But they didn't recognize it was Jesus. This happens a lot in resurrection stories. Jesus has been changed so much by the experience of being resurrected that he's not recognizable. The disciples don't physically see the same person that they used to be following around. So because he's been transformed somehow, they don't recognize him, but he calls out to them, my sons, you haven't caught anything, have you? And the disciples say, no. And so this stranger on the beach says, well, throw your nets on the starboard side of the boat, and your net will find the fish. And I don't know what they said about the stranger on the beach telling them how to do this job that they had been doing their entire lives, but according to the story, they did what he said. And suddenly they couldn't lift their net because it was so full of fish, the massive weight of the fish. And the disciple that loved Jesus, this unnamed disciple that appears throughout the Gospel of John, the disciple loved by Jesus turned to Peter and said, "It's the Lord." And so immediately when Simon Peter hears this, he threw on his shirt, which he would take off while he was working, and he dove into the sea. I would have done this in the other direction, but Simon Peter threw on his shirt and dove into the sea, and the rest of the disciples followed him, bringing the boat and dragging this net of this immense catch of fish. They were close to the shore. They only fished about 100 yards out. When they arrived on shore, they saw a charcoal fire laid with fish already on the grill, and he had bread too. So this is a meal. They're going to share this meal together, and Jesus has fish and bread, and it's probably reminiscent of the last meal that they shared together when Jesus was telling them, okay, these are your final instructions. I am about to go someplace you can't go. I am about to go and be crucified, and that's not your job. Here's what your job is. In fact, this is what he said. This is a flashback to the Last Supper. We're familiar with that storytelling technique, I'm sure. Jesus told them, "My children, my time here is brief. You will be searching for me, and as I have told the Jews, you cannot go where I am going. So I give you a new command. Love each other deeply and fully." You know, the Christian scriptures are called the New Testament. They consider the Jewish scriptures to be the Old Testament, and they consider the New Testament to be their additional scriptures. And this is what that's about, the New Testament, the new commandment. And Jesus is saying it in really, really succinct terms in this command to the disciples. Love each other deeply and fully. That's your job now. He goes on to say, remember the ways that I have loved you, and demonstrate your love for others in those same ways. Everyone will know you as my followers if you demonstrate your love to others. So Jesus is telling them at the Last Supper, he says, everything I've been doing is just loving other people deeply and fully, and you can do that. What I have been doing for the last few years is nothing special. You are all capable of loving one another deeply and fully. So now that's your charge. Go and do that. And the disciples were not listening. They were hooked on, at least Peter was hooked on this idea of, you can't come with me. I'm going someplace and you can't come with me. And so Peter, instead of commenting on this loving one another stuff, he says, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus says, Peter, you cannot come with me now, but you will join me later. And Peter says, why can't I go now? I would give my life for you. And I'm imagining Peter is still thinking of some kind of classic revolution against the Romans, and he wants to be there. He's ready. He's been waiting for this moment. This is the time. I want to be on the front lines. I would die for you. I'm ready. Let me go with you. And Jesus says, will you really give your life for me, Peter? Because I'll tell you the truth, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And Peter does. When they arrest Jesus and they take him off to be questioned and eventually tortured, Peter follows along as closely as he can. He gets to this outer courtyard, and 3 different people recognize him and say, aren't you one of his disciples? Aren't you with his crew? And every time Peter says, no, you got the wrong guy. That's not me. This cause that he's willing to die for, this thing that he would follow Jesus anywhere for, suddenly, no, that's not me. You got the wrong guy. So back to John chapter 21. Jesus is there on the beach. The disciples, a couple of them at least, recognize him. And he says, bring some of the fish that you just caught. and join me for breakfast." And not one of the disciples dared to ask, "Who are you?" because they knew. And Jesus took bread and gave it to each of them, and then he did the same thing with the fish. This was the third time the disciples had seen Jesus since his death and resurrection, and they finished eating breakfast. This is how the author of the Gospel of John often talks about things. He ends stories and begins stories reminding people to be children of God, and that this becoming is an ongoing commitment. It's not a moment in time. It's a thing that you keep doing according to the way the Gospel of John presents it. For John, the resurrection of Jesus is not about life after death. It's about the reality that through following the way of Jesus, people can have abundant life, a full and meaningful life here and now, not waiting, but right now, it is available to people. That's John's message. And following the way of Jesus, for the gospel writer of John, means love each other deeply and fully. The logic statement goes like this: if you love each other deeply and fully, then you will have a full and abundant life. That's the way that goes. So they finish eating breakfast, and they spend time with Jesus. But that's not the end of the story, because then Jesus talks to Peter directly. And he says, "Peter, do you love me more than all of this?" And Peter says, "Yes, Lord. You know that I love you." And Jesus says, "Take care of my lambs." And then he asks Peter again, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Yes, Lord, surely you must know that I love you." And so Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." And then he asks him a third time, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter is hurt at this point because Jesus has asked him the same question 3 times, "Do you love me?" And Peter says, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus says, "Tend my sheep." Ever since that night, this is the third time that Peter and Jesus have been together since the resurrection. This is the third time since Peter has denied even knowing who Jesus is, this person that he loved so deeply that he would die for him. This is the third time they've been together, and this has not been resolved until now. Peter has been carrying this around with him, and I can imagine the constellation of emotions that go along with that. Maybe you can too. Not just betrayal of a friend, but also this betrayal of something that Peter cares about so deeply. It's a betrayal of himself. There's probably some shame wound up in there. Maybe there's a little bit of doubt that Jesus really knows that Peter has betrayed him 3 times and that he's trying to just not mention it. I don't know. But ever since that night, Peter has been carrying that around. And so matching those 3 denials, Jesus asks Peter to reaffirm his love 3 times. And in response to that, Jesus re-articulates Peter's calling to ministry. Don't just go back to life as it was. Don't just go back to life as usual, going out and fishing. You have another calling. There's some important work for you to do. There are people who need you to minister to them. Go and do that. If you love me, that's the calling. That's what you go do. So the lesson that I draw from this is that no matter what someone may have done, reconciliation can restore that person to who their deepest life-affirming values call them to be. And that this is redemption. I know a lot of times we think of the Easter story and we think of redemption happening, or a lot of people in our world may think of redemption happening because a divine being suffered this inhuman suffering, bearing all the burdens of the entire world on their shoulders. But in the Gospel of John, in this story at least, redemption is the act of human reconciliation that any of us could do. This picture of redemption is Jesus calling Peter back into relationship, mending something that was broken. And in covenantal community, accountability is our mutual commitment to do just that, to call one another back to center, to redeem one another, for lack of a better word. To say, remember that thing that we really care deeply about? Come back to that. Accountability requires reconciliation when covenant is broken. A lack of reconciliation means that the covenant and the relationship stay in a broken state. But repair, and I say in covenantal relationship, but really in any of our relationships, repair is the healthy response when things have been ruptured or broken. Repairing things is the healthy response to wounds in our relationships. And it doesn't mean that there's no sign that anything was damaged. I mean, maybe my repair is sloppier than some people's would be, but he's stitched up again. There's evidence there, but he's not going to lose any stuffing, you know. It's mendable, repairable, just like all of our relationships. Now, mending things can happen in a lot of different ways. I'm sorry is the most direct way to start repairing things. Let's be honest. If I've done something that's been hurtful or harmful, and I'm willing to just say, I'm sorry, then that would start the process of repair right there. We let a lot of things get in the way of that simple process, that simple apology. What would it have taken for Peter over breakfast with Jesus to just say, I'm sorry. You are absolutely right. You said that I was going to deny you 3 times before dawn, and I absolutely did that thing. And I feel terrible about it. And that's not who I want to be. And that's not really how I feel about you or us. And I am really, really sorry. What would it have taken for Peter to say that? More than what Peter had in him, obviously. It's tough for a lot of us. And Peter had already had 2 other chances. So, in the absence of that kind of apology, it's possible for us to embrace our roles as redeemers when something is ruptured and another person seems unaware of it or unable to face it. We have the capacity to call one another back into relationship. This, as far as I can tell from this chapter of the Gospel of John, this is the message of Easter. That redemption is possible, and it is possible through us. Redemption is possible, and it's possible through us. This is a very human act of calling one another toward repair and restoration. In any of our relationships, stitching up what has been torn between us and getting back on course with who our life-affirming values call us to be. Now, I want to invite us into a moment of reflection, and if you're willing or comfortable doing so, you might even close your eyes. You don't have to. Because there may be someone that you have brought to mind or that has come to mind without you wanting them to whom you have been waiting to apologize. And maybe today or this week is the opportunity to simply begin the process of repair. Or maybe the person who has come into your mind is someone you have been waiting for an apology from, with your arms folded and your feet in the ground, saying eventually they will get it and they will come back and say, I'm sorry for that horrible thing that they did. And maybe for us, the opportunity is to offer repair, restoration, redemption. It's a very human behavior. and perhaps even a responsibility for people who value meaningful, authentic relationship. So I'll give us just a moment of stillness to consider what that might look like today or this week, to be redeemers. And as you are ready and willing, I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing together When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. It's hymn number 1008 in the teal hymnals. I do have a few things that I want to let you know about. And the first one is if you're joining us online, or even if you're here in person and you have appreciated something about today's service, then I invite you to like and share it with other people, subscribe to our channel. You are our marketing team. So the things that you share online help other people know about what we are doing here. So it's important. And so if it's been of use to you or if you appreciate it, then share it with others who might as well. I also want to let you know, I know that we gave to a branch of Catholic Charities today, but through the Hope Center, we learned this week about an Iranian family who needed a little bit of help with a first month of rent. They have been getting all their pieces in place, and the Hope Center has been helping them with a lot of the logistics of settling in Cleveland, because where they were living was not safe for them for a variety of reasons. So I just want to let you know that I have covered their first month of rent. And it was a little more than I usually send out from the Ministerial Discretionary Fund. So if this is something that is on your heart to help out with, please talk to me after the service today, and I'll let you know what you can do to replenish some of that. They are taken care of, so there's not a lot of urgency for them particularly, but it was a little more than what I usually send out from our Ministerial Discretionary Fund, and I just want to let you know about that opportunity to help if you want. Coming up very soon, we are not having an egg hunt today. There were lots of logistics and traveling and all of that kind of stuff, but we are still having an egg hunt, and it's going to be next week. So our older young folks are preparing eggs today, and then next week they're going to leave the service a little bit early so that they can hide the eggs, and then our younger young folks will be able to find the eggs, and some of our older young folks, like a lot of the people in here right now, might enjoy helping with that next week, because I have a feeling that some of the eggs are going to be tricky to find, because I know some of our brilliant junior and high school people, and they are going to find sneaky hiding places. So if you would like to help out with that, please see Allan, Georgia, and he will let you know how you can be a part of that next week. April 14th, the week after that, we'll have our second Sunday meal. April 17th, we've got a Considering Membership session, and the Wacky, Wise, Wonderful Women's Retreat is April 19th through 21st. I know that seems like it's a long way off, but registering early for that will really help people know how many people to expect and how to plan for that. So registration for that women's retreat is in the newsletter and on the website, so please do that. If you're intending to go to that retreat, do that soon. There will be stewardship team folks in the fellowship hall today with blank pledge cards if you are trying to figure out what to do about pledging for the 24-25 fiscal year. So please stop by that stewardship table if you have not already submitted your pledge. If you're a guest visiting with us, don't do anything with that. That's what members do. There's a lot of other exciting things going on, so please do check your newsletter and our website for all the details on that. On this Easter Sunday, we often think about new life, the possibility of new life. And perhaps there is no better way to have newness of life than to repair what is wounded or ruptured in our relationships and begin fresh, centered on the things that matter most to us, the things that we love most deeply, the people that we love most deeply. May we have the courage to do so. Amen, and blessed be. We are going to extinguish our chalice with words found on your yellow pew card. It's on the opposite side from our covenant, and it says extinguishing the chalice. I invite you to read along with those words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together